Welcome one more. My name is Tawess, and today we are continuing painting an orc. But today we're going to be doing distressed armor. And we're not going to go through any deeper guides about the colors used. Basically, I'm going to start off using a white. You can use any white you want. It is not necessarily important as such, as this is just going to be emulating a primer layer on, for example, a piece of metal. Because in most places you put down a grey or white primer coat and then you put the paint on top of that. Much like how we prime our models, and for the same reasons. So, once that is down, we're going to start applying our color layer. And again, here you can pick pretty much whatever color you like. It is not necessarily not important per se. I picked this model because it has a very interesting amount of armor, because unlike most knight armors, for example, this armor is not flat, making it a bit more interesting to distress it. Because what you have to think about when you do this is, where would the paint stick? Where will the paint remain? And in essence, any high point on the armor would be out of paint. The paint would have rubbed off. There would be no paint left. Now, this means that you have to look at raised areas on the armor. Now, I'm not just slabbing the paint down here, but there's a reason for that. The idea here is that I'm trying to put down a good base layer for this red, because it's a very thin red. Nothing else, because it is stupid thin actually, but I like the tone. It has a sort of sun-bleached quality to it, which fitted with what I was trying to do here. But in essence, you put it down in the grooves, in the deep places, in the concave, I think it is, in the places where armor goes inwards and ends up close to other bits and pieces. Like, for example, on the shoulder pad you have a glyph. So close to the glyph, where things wouldn't be knocking in as often, you go in and put that, making sure that you get all the deep places. Then, going on to the metals, I picked rough iron here, which is a very dark metallic, has a bit of a rust quality to it, and that is why I picked it. I wanted a solid layer, dark layer for the metal, the brighter metal to pick on, making it more dynamic. But again, you don't necessarily need to put it on this. I did it just because I felt it was a good starting point for the metal. Gives me a bit more of a contrast to work with. I can work down towards this one. Then I picked a fairly dark metal. You can pick gunmetal. I think Games Workshop had a pig iron, or was that perhaps P3 paints? Anyway, these darker gunmetalish metal paints. And again, here, just much like with the skin colors previous video, we need to go in with layers here. You can't slab it on. Do layers, a little bit at a time, because you want to start eating away at this white layer, this prime layer. And then, when you feel you have a good dry brush, you can start tackling the raised areas of the paint. And if you're done this good, it will slowly but surely put down the silver paint on top of the natural paint, leaving it in the cracks, crevices, pits, and such as. And this will definitely have an ugly stage. Don't be afraid about that, just keep on working. It's not a precision paint job. But just keep in mind, where would the metal rub against things? And wherever that is, that's where you put in the brightest metal. And then you just work it down all the way. Just make sure to don't paint into cracks and crevices, because that's going to lose the entire effect. Unless you want it to be really, really rusty, because then you can put a rust paint or a rust effect in these things. And we're going to get to rust in a little while. But one thing to think about, like when you have armor like this, is, say, keep in mind where pieces rub. because metal rubbing on metal creates these very shiny surfaces. So if you have a place where metal should be roughing up against metal, like for example the shoulder pads on this one, that's a good place to start. Same thing with the bulbous part of this shoulder pad. I imagine this like smacking into walls and doors and, well, any regular man-made structure, because orcs are a bit wider than regular humans, but also not in the habit of caring about things like that. So I would imagine that these places would quickly become scuffed and have paint rub off. And as I say, I wanted this paint to look really bleached and sun bleached. Like the orcus took this piece of scrap metal from the battlefield and is using his armor. The sun has been hitting it. It's not been treated very nicely. They've been in deserts. They've been everywhere around. And the paint is just about to give up. But the orc doesn't really care because he doesn't really do armor per se. He's like, it protects me. That's all it needs to do. And one thing more to think about when you're doing this is there's no exact measure when enough is enough. You just have to look at it once it's dried, see if you need to add more silver, maybe you need to add some more paint. It's an organic process, but this is the quickest way I've found to do this. Now, I'm going to apply dry rust, which is the Armor Painter effect paint. But you could technically do this with pigment powders, you could do it with regular paint, dry brush regular paint. Dry rust is basically just a very dry paint. I apply it roughly where water would collect, moisture would collect. Again, think about where would moisture collect, and there you add the rust. It's not more difficult than that. Again, there is no hard science. You just apply it where you think it looks good, but be sparing with it. Don't do too much. Anyway, that's pretty much it. There you have a quick distressed armor for all intents and purposes. And yeah, looks really good, especially on orcs and other less industrial races. Well, pretty much just nice rusty armor for someone who hasn't taken care of it. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, and do play fair. Bye.